I thought a great deal about taking the first 10 minutes of my background video for Atlantis: The Lost Empire and just putting it in here, since Treasure Planet is what you might call deep mouse. It's part of the long vines of the Disney tale, and a lot of their background drama plays into it. Instead, I'll just put a link below this video so you can go watch it if you like. If you're on YouTube, that is. If you're on the website, it's on the right under Movies. So with that, let's take a look at Treasure Planet. The tale of Treasure Planet is deeply intertwined with the professional trajectory of Ron Clements and John Musker. The saga begins in 1985 during a gong show. The gong show at Disney was a creative forum for those within the animation department to pitch new ideas for potential projects. The concept was inspired by a television talent show called The Gong Show, which aired in the 70s and 80s, where a panel of celebrity judges had the power to eliminate an act mid-performance by striking a large gong. At Disney's Gong Show, it wasn't quite that bad. It was an open space meant to stimulate innovation, promote creativity, and give every participant, regardless of their role or seniority, a chance to contribute to the future direction of Disney's storytelling. The format allowed for a variety of concepts to be proposed, original ideas, fresh takes on existing properties, basically a chance to let the imagination run free, showcasing ideas from some of the leading minds within the company. It was during one of these sessions that Ron Clements pitched his idea for Treasure Island in Space, which would eventually evolve into Treasure Planet, obviously. Such was the ethos of the Gong Show, a space where ambitious outside-the-box ideas could be planted, nurtured, and potentially brought to life on the big screen. But not that one. He certainly tried. He presented a take on Stevenson's swashbuckling tale of pirates and high adventure and propelling it into the cosmos, a fusion of classic literature and futuristic vision. But it was passed over, and instead another idea he presented at the Gong Show went forward, The Little Mermaid. Needless to say, that one worked out rather well. Musker, a collaborator with whom Clements had worked on the animated movie The Great Mouse Detective that would come out the following year, and who had worked with him on The Fox and the Hound, was quickly brought on board to bolster this project. Their later success with The Little Mermaid breathed new life into Disney's animation wing and established a new era for the studio called the Disney Renaissance. Despite the whirlwind success surrounding The Little Mermaid, Clements and Musker remained unwavering in their passion for Treasure Planet. But it wasn't to be. They were also interested in We're Back, a story about dinosaurs, but Spielberg had the rights tied up with the book, so instead they were offered 3 projects that Disney was interested in: Swan Lake, King of the Jungle, which would eventually become The Lion King, and Aladdin. Work on developing the music of Aladdin had already started during The Little Mermaid, and the pair liked the idea of the far more zany potential of Aladdin, so they went with that one. Well, thanks in no small part to the ability to woo none other than Robin Williams to bring the genie to life, Aladdin was another smash hit, further solidifying the duo's reputation as creative heavyweights in the animation world. Their string of successes gave them hope that their beloved project would finally receive the green light. They had a script ready, and momentum seemed to be building, but the tides of corporate decision-making proved capricious once more. The great obstacle of the film was one Jeffrey Katzenberg, the man at the helm of the studio. According to sources, Katzenberg found the concept of Treasure Planet thoroughly unappealing, and that the idea of adapting a classic coming-of-age tale into a space opera was, well, doomed to failure. His opposition led to the project being shelved, a decision that infuriated Clements and Musker. Yet it was very likely that Katzenberg would finally get the film to be made, just not intentionally. Instead, Disney offered them a few films, none of which they liked, and finally, when they heard about Hercules, they began working on that. And that was the moment when finally their chance for their pet project came up. There are a few versions of how this all played out, but I think actually they might all be different pieces of a single puzzle. I may be wrong about this, but I'm going to assemble them for you, and you can see if they make a cohesive whole like I think they do. Katzenberg and Eisner were getting more and more paranoid about each other, until finally Katzenberg had to go. and soon after his departure, he and Spielberg, along with his friend David Geffen, formed DreamWorks. Well, Katzenberg began pilfering as much of the talent from Disney as he could, with exorbitant salaries, and two of the people he made overtures for were, well, you could probably guess, Clements and Musker. He didn't like Treasure Island in Space, but that doesn't mean he hated their work. He knew talent when he saw it. What seems likely, then, is that they spoke with Roy Disney about the offer and about their frustrations over Treasure Island in Space. Surely with the hits they've been cranking out, they deserved their shot, didn't they? Roy was on their side, convinced the project had potential, and went to Michael Eisner to discuss the situation. With Katzenberg pillaging the halls of Disney on one hand, and Roy saying that Clements and Musker have a solid idea for their next hit on the other, Eisner was willing to give them a 7-year contract that included their new film, Treasure Planet, as their next project after Hercules. Treasure Planet is distinguished by its unconventional fusion of 18th century seafaring aesthetics with futuristic sci-fi elements, encapsulated in the creator's formula of 70-30, that is, 70% traditional, 30% sci-fi. This novel blend imbued the film with a singular visual identity, allowing it to transcend the confines of traditional pirate narrative or conventional science fiction. It's more space fantasy than futuristic science fiction, says Clements, and Musker adds, from the earliest go-around, there was this kind of romantic archetypal image that we wanted, and we had to create a universe that supported that. So that's why we didn't say it's the future of this universe, because we wanted to have breathable atmospheres and no guys in bubble helmets. It had to be an alternate world. We were influenced by Terry Gilliam and his fantasy worlds. The design process was a formidable task, headed by veteran Disney artist Hans Bacher, who had left his mark on beloved classics like Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, and Mulan. With Treasure Planet, he and his team had the arduous task of envisioning and manifesting an entire cosmos. This involved creating a whole plethora of alien characters, each with unique features and personas, in addition to diverse spaceships and sweeping galactic panoramas, a whole 9 yards. The filmmakers didn't shy away from explaining the process's complexities and compromises, as reflected in a comment from one of the team members. There were hundreds and hundreds of designs of aliens. We tried not to make the movie too violent, but if you look carefully, you'll see there's a lot of aliens on the ship at the beginning, and by the end, there's a much smaller group. We don't see how a lot of them die. We do see a few. That was economics because the more complicated aliens got killed off first. The first to go was the big, lugubrious alien who had a bigger part, but we made his role smaller because he was the most difficult to draw. Aliens took on all manner of forms, from spider-like to, well, speaking with flatulence. Bringing the characters together proved a challenge. Silver, for instance, was reimagined as a cyborg because of his famous missing leg, now missing an arm as well. In trying to come up with a look, the artist explained, there's a variety of different people in there. One is the soldier who guards the tomb of the unknown soldier in Washington, who has a head that's like it's sculpted out of rock. Then there was the guy who did morph. He had a baby during the making of the film, and he had a picture of the baby's face exploding with joy. I thought that was Silver. Then I was studying the face of Robert Shaw in Jaws, with the space in his teeth. And there was my high school football coach. It was a blend of real people. I put all these ingredients in the pot. It cooks and stews until it just explodes on the page. It's a strange thing. I think our characters exist before we start to draw them, and your drawing is trying to find that character. In the end, you have a very complex face that I would never have designed if I was wanting to make my life easy. But that's who Silver is, and you go along with it. Of course, what was most memorable about the film's appearance are the spaceship designs. The RLS Legacy was a sort of hybrid, merging the exterior aesthetics of a traditional galleon with the interior details of a spaceship. This combination created an interesting juxtaposition of old and new, traditional and futuristic, which is a fitting point considering the new technology and legacy that they had there at Disney. The multiplane camera was a pioneering invention by Disney in the 1930s. It amplified the depth in animated scenes by layering multiple transparent cells at different distances from the camera. Each cell had different elements of the scene, which, when moved independently, resulted in a parallax effect, adding a novel three-dimensional feeling to traditionally two-dimensional animations. This innovative approach significantly elevated the visual realism in Disney's early classics. Well, Deep Canvas was developed in the 1990s and could be considered a digital evolution of this multiplane camera concept. While the multiplane could give three-dimensional aspects to scenes, Deep Canvas went where the limits were and pushed them away, providing true depth there. A team of Disney engineers led by software developer Eric Daniels began working on a solution to their problems with 3D. Their idea was to allow artists to paint in a 3D virtual space, effectively creating a canvas that had depth and could be traveled through. In practice, it meant that animators would create a 3D model of the scene first, and then using specially designed software, the 2D artists could paint onto the surface of the 3D model. The software would then track the brush strokes and colors, projecting them onto the 3D geometry. This way, animators could create complex environments that had the hand-painted feel of traditional animation, but with the depth and dimensionality of 3D graphics. The groundbreaking technology was first used in Disney's Tarzan back in 1999, most notably in the Son of Man sequence, when Tarzan is surfing through the tree branches. The 3D environments gave the scene a fluid, dynamic feel that would have been almost impossible to achieve with traditional hand-drawn animation. For this achievement, Daniels was awarded an Academy Scientific and Technical Award in 2003. By the time that Treasure Planet was in production, the technology had evolved to the point to allow for more detailed and complex scenes. It was the first Disney film to use the technology extensively, enabling the creation of sweeping landscapes and bustling cityscapes that were as richly detailed as any hand-painted background, but had a sense of depth and volume that made the world feel more immersive and tangible. This was a significant leap forward in blending traditional animation techniques with new digital technology. One of the key departures from Robert Louis Stevenson's original Treasure Island and Disney's Treasure Planet was the character of Jim Hawkins. In the book, Hawkins is portrayed as a young boy on the precipice of adulthood, while in the film he's been aged up into a rebellious teenager. This decision was not made lightly and was met with a fair amount of controversy both inside and outside of Disney. The decision to age Jim into a teenager was largely driven by the director's desire to explore a more complex protagonist, they said. In their vision, Jim was not just a wide-eyed, adventurous lad, but a young man grappling with his past, his identity, and his place in the universe. It was about portraying the classic journey of self-discovery and growth that comes from adolescence. Design-wise, the team had to balance making Jim relatable to contemporary audiences while staying true to the period nature of the story. They ultimately settled on a design that incorporated elements of both, visually showcasing Jim's rebellious nature with a futuristic spacesuit-inspired outfit, while maintaining the traditional pirate-era aesthetic in his physical appearance and movements. Yet this decision was met with resistance. Some felt that by aging Jim into a teenager, they risked losing the sense of childlike wonder and innocence that's integral to the original story. Ultimately, the decision stood. In this film, Jim is portrayed as a headstrong, rebellious teenager with an affinity for solar surfing, a futuristic version of sky surfing, giving him a more action-oriented role. To bring the character to life, the filmmaker sought an actor who could bring a sense of youthful rebellion and vulnerability to the part, choosing Joseph Gordon-Levitt, then known for his work on the television show Third Rock from the Sun. Despite their importance, neither Jim nor John Silver were initially written with any particular actors in mind. The search for their voices involved months of auditions, and Brian Murray got the part essentially by happenstance. He accompanied a friend to the audition and decided to just give it a go. Murray's rich, seasoned voice brought such depth and complexity to the cyborg cook that he was hired on the spot. An interesting note is that Murray was cast in spite of the fact that he was virtually unacquainted with animating voice work. which added an authentic and original tone to his character that they were looking for. Theater performers make great voices for animation because they have so much control over that instrument, explained producer Roy Conley. That's why New York and London are really important places for us to audition. In contrast, the characters of Dr. Doppler and Captain Amelia were specifically tailored for David Hyde Pierce and Emma Thompson. Pierce, given a copy of the script and preliminary sketches during his work on Pixar's A Bug's Life, found the script and visuals so compelling that he readily accepted the role. Thompson's casting for Captain Amelia was an exciting venture for her, as this was her first action-adventure character, while she was pregnant, no less. Patrick McGoohan was cast as Billy Bones upon the recommendation of Corey Burton, who voiced the character of Otis. McGoohan's involvement actually marked his final acting role, believe it or not. While the team busied themselves on the picture, it was starting to look like the team of Musker and Clements had backed the wrong horse. DreamWorks put out Shrek in 2001, a film that openly mocked all that Disney was and took the world by storm. Meanwhile, Disney's hubris with the film Pearl Harbor was on display in an extravaganza so over the top it sounds made up. The USS John C. Stennis was taken from San Diego to Honolulu, where Pearl Harbor veterans were brought out for a screening of the film. F-15s were flown overhead, and the piece de resistance, I can't even believe this is true, Navy SEALs were parachuted down to land on the deck of the carrier. The Honolulu Symphony Pops played, Disney put on a massive fireworks display. The whole affair cost them $5 million for a film with a Rotten Tomatoes score of 24%. The film only managed to not be a flop because it was believed to be such a surefire hit that no films had tried to challenge it for the coveted Memorial Day weekend, making less than Shrek despite costing more than twice as much to make. Peter Schneider had been hoping to retire in triumph after its success, but instead stuck around hoping the next Disney picture would allow him to have a nicer exit. Well, that film was Atlantis: The Lost Empire. That film failed to earn back its budget, and Schneider's departure at that point was incorrectly viewed as a forced resignation for his failure. Actuality, it was a symptom of trouble at the mouse. It was a nasty 1-2 punch for Treasure Planet. First, it made Musker and Clements nervous about the Shrek versus Atlantis situation. Results showed that their target audience preferred CG over hand-drawn animation because they saw the latter as kids' stuff. Now add in the fact that it was likewise a non-musical, action-animated film with a retro adventure feel, and it seemed like they were getting a vision of their future. Then word came around. Apparently the I want to drop Navy SEALs onto World War II veterans price tag was going to be paid out of the animation department. Thomas Schumacher, president at this time of Walt Disney Feature Animations, met with 2,000 employees in groups of 50 or less to discuss plans for cost cuts, more CG projects, and other drastic changes. This naturally included layoffs and salary reductions. They were left trying to finish this film with morale dropping like the CGI bombs over Pearl Harbor. On November 27, 2002, Musker and Clements watched a 17-year journey end in total failure. The deadline, as with Dinosaur as discussed with Atlantis, was locked in because of the McDonald's deal, and it came out the week after a Harry Potter movie. So abysmal was the $12 million weekend opening that Disney broke a record. It gave the largest write-down in animated film history, $74 million. Now, what that means was they were publicly declaring, we own this thing, and it's not worth as much as we thought. Now, this is required by the SEC, but it was done so quickly that it was reported, and quite accurately, a lack of faith in the picture, and that hobbled any chance of Treasure Planet making a comeback. Schumacher was so outraged over the move that he told Eisner, "This is the final straw, I'm quitting." Eisner, in turn, tried to pin the failure on Roy Disney, saying it was his project, Remember way back when he said, do this to help keep these two guys around? Well, now Eisner was painting it as if he had done the whole thing and pushed it through himself. Well, the funny thing is if you look at Rotten Tomatoes, you find out the film gains a fresh rating, 69% from critics, 20 points higher than Atlantis and 45 points higher than Pearl Harbor. So, was the film worthy of being labeled a bomb? Tomorrow, we'll take a look at Treasure Planet.